Please welcome Penny ABEYWARDENA, New York City Commissioner for International Affairs, and Jan Vapaavuori, Mayor of Helsinki, Finland.
Hi, everyone. I am Penny ABEYWARDENA, New York City's Commissioner for International Affairs, and I am so excited to be joined by the Mayor of Helsinki. We are here to talk about something that you guys don't probably think about all the time, and that is city diplomacy and city leadership. And what I mean by that is very personal to being an American right now. I think what is really important from a city perspective is to show, I think, the global community that there are, what American values represent are sane public policy here in New York City. And so one of the real leadership opportunities right now is that federal governments are abdicating their responsibility on global issues like climate and like immigration. And so right now, over the last year, the United Nations has focused on the Global Compact on Migration. And while federal governments have abdicated, including the American administration, in participating in this, I'm proud to say that New York City led a coalition of over 50 international cities, because at the end of the day, New York City, under the de Blasio administration, believed that our diverse, inclusive population is what makes the best of this city, in particular, what makes the best of American values manifesting itself on our streets every day. Another way that we are doing this is by empowering young people. Throughout our 5 boroughs, we have a junior ambassador program where they're learning about the Sustainable Development Goals, connecting with their counterparts around the world, but most importantly, they are doing something related to the SDGs in their community. And one of the examples that I love to share is the SDG for 14, Life Underwater. We have a young junior ambassador in the South Bronx, and her commitment is to clean the South Bronx River. So at the end of the day, city diplomacy is very much about action and the leadership that we are going to take, again, as we have federal governments, and in my personal experience, our American government abdicating its responsibility on issues that I think matter to all of us. And I'm really pleased to be joined by the Mayor of Helsinki. We've had a couple of meetings, and we share the same values when it comes to city leadership and the role that we can play to support issues that matter globally, like climate, but also locally in terms of what impacts our residents. So it is a pleasure to have you, and if you can please tell us a little bit about how city diplomacy is manifesting itself in Helsinki.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. You know, before I took office as a mayor, last year I spent 7 years as a minister in Finland, and I remember especially my time as the Minister of Housing. I think my biggest success story was when we started a program aiming to halve the long-term homelessness in Finland, and we actually succeeded to do that. And I also remember my biggest failure maybe when we started, when I had an idea to really improve the energy efficiency of the building, existing building block. And what was in common for these stories was that they were really closely linked to how I was able to engage the city leaders.
That's right.
I was able to do that in the first one, and I was not in the second one. We all know that urbanization itself strengthens the role of the cities. We know that cities and city leaders are stepping up when nation states, for one or another reason, are not able to solve and tackle global issues. But I think it's also important to understand that the toolkit of cities is actually much more grassroots, much more relevant for several global issues than that of the nation states. And also that the cities, they have a direct contact with the people, a direct dialogue with the people. Right. And I think that that is something which really makes a difference and plays a big role in today's world. And city diplomacy, I think, should also be based on these facts in today's world, that it really needs to be concrete action, concrete benchmarking, best practices, concrete initiatives. And of course, in Helsinki, we are also doing quite a lot of this, some more successful, some less. It's not an easy task.
It is not an easy task. And I have to say, right now you mentioned the fact that we are looking at what is concrete and what is happening in our communities. And I will say New York City a couple of years ago felt climate change in real time with the impact of Sandy, with Superstorm Sandy. And something that came out of that was a real commitment through both the Bloomberg administration and now the de Blasio administration to ensure that we are taking on climate change as strongly as possible. And one of the first things we did, and here's an example of city leadership, is as the Trump administration pulled out of the Paris Climate Accord, New York City became one of the first to directly commit ourselves as a city to the Paris Climate Accord. Thank you. And I think what's so important in that example is now that we now have over 350 US cities that have directly committed itself to the Paris Climate Accord. So it's not just New York City. And I think the leadership that is necessary right now is driven by the fact that we see what is happening in our communities, right? Part of the reason we got involved with the Global Compact on Migration is New York City is a city of immigrants, and our diversity and the way that we are an inclusive community is what makes New York City the city that it is. And so one of our leadership spaces, and I want to talk about climate, is what we are going to do in terms of achieving the Paris Climate Accord. And one of the important places that New York City can really put its money where its mouth is our pension funds. And the mayor partnered with Sadiq Khan of the London mayor to create a global divestment network. And we are divesting our pension dollars from fossil fuel companies, and we are reinvesting those dollars, and these are billions of dollars, into climate change solution companies. And that is where I think long-term, but again, bringing the networks together. But we have seen the impacts of climate change in New York City, and we are doing something about it. And we're doing something not only sort of with our own ability here in the city, but in partnership like this global divestment network. So I'd like to hear how climate change is impacting Helsinki and how you're taking a leadership role in that.
First of all, I'd like to congratulate you. From a European perspective, it's really important that the US cities step up. We haven't witnessed any extreme weather conditions. We haven't seen any Sandy, even if one of my closest collaborators is called Sandy. But still, our people, they feel very strong about the planet and the climate change. So already today, we have been able to reduce emissions by 40% since 1990, even before the Paris Agreement.
Yeah.
We have a very ambitious program where the goal is to become carbon neutral by 2035 and reduce that by 2030. You know, there are people who believe in technology, and there are people who believe in rules and regulations,
yes,
and there are people who believe in enlightenment. I think all of those are crucial.
Absolutely.
We really need all of them on board in order to make that happen. We have a quite fresh program with 143 concrete action points, 56 related to construction, 30 related to transport, and the rest related to consumption, procurement, and so on and so on. So what you need is a really comprehensive approach, a really holistic view, and also understanding that it's not an easy issue. And in order to make that happen, you really need to engage the society. You really need to engage the people. You need to empower the people and commit them, because otherwise it's not possible.
You know, on that climate question, part of this climate topic, part of what we have to do as a city, and my office does, is to ensure that we are sharing that information, that we are spreading that word. And I'm curious, just still on the climate, how are you getting it to your people, how important, how urgent this is?
Finland is the country which is proud of educated people.
Yeah.
I mean, we have maybe the best school in the world. And I think it's not a big issue in Finland anymore, or in Helsinki, whether climate change is true or not, and whether we should fight it or not.
There you go. I wish I could move to Finland.
But now the
make
case
life
is,
so
of
much
course,
easier.
but then the case is that, of course, you have to keep in mind that we have already tackled the low-hanging fruits.
Right.
And it becomes
right.
more and more difficult all
That's
the
right.
time. And I mean, to explain this for the people that you need to give up something in order to save the planet.
Right.
And that becomes more and more difficult each and every year in all circumstances and in all societies.
Right.
That's why you just need to keep up talking to the people all the time.
Absolutely. And one of the ways that we do this, New York City believes very strongly in the Sustainable Development Goals, which I know all of you are very aware of. But when the SDGs were being agreed to in 2015, it was also the same period in which New York City was launching its 20-year development agenda based on the experiences of Sandy. So how are we dealing with sustainability and resiliency, but really looking at it with an equity lens? And because of our equity lens, we mapped One NYC to the Sustainable Development Goals, had synergies throughout, and we created a program called Global Vision Urban Action. We understood that at the end of the day, how New York City can localize the SDGs could perhaps be a template for how we work with other cities around the world. And this is particularly important because I think when people think about the SDGs, they're like, oh my goodness, what governments, what are they achieving? And the reality is that SDGs are impacting our everyday lives and we can impact them back, and how are we doing that? And so with Global Vision Urban Action, we created a platform from which we can exchange best practices with cities and states. And this is where New York City is very unique. We are as large, if not larger than 141 countries from a population perspective. So if something can work here, it can work in other places. But we are also not Manhattan. We have structural challenges throughout our 5 boroughs, and there is a humility in how we engage with cities and countries around the world around exchanging best practices. And so it was our honor this summer during the high-level political forum. New York City became the first city in the world to report directly to the UN and submit a voluntary local report, a voluntary local review. That is something that the UN has asked nation states to do, and it's called the Voluntary National Review. But we knew our government wasn't going to do it, so New York City showed up with our voluntary local review. And it has been an exciting, thank you. And it has been a very exciting opportunity for us to engage the global conversation using this framework of issues that we care about. And I want to hear from you, Mayor, what your thoughts are on the SDGs.
Sustainable development has been, like you could say, part of our DNA in everything we have done already for quite a long time. Actually now a quite new, fresh city strategy, securing sustainable growth is not among our main priorities, but it is the most important priority of the city. But to be honest, I think that we have had a little bit too domestic approach so far. And in today's world, where the role of the cities is strengthening, as we discussed here earlier, I think that we want to connect that to the global contexts more. And that's why I'm happy to announce that if New York were the first city in the world, Helsinki will be the second one. Yes. And we actually already have a decision by our city board last week that we are starting the same process. I think it's an excellent way to connect our city strategy with a global framework. It's an excellent way to make our success, but also our failure, more transparent.
That's right.
It's an excellent way to take the city diplomacy and city collaboration to the next level, to learn from each other. And I hope that that we can help you, and that we can together inspire also other cities in the world to join us.
Absolutely. And this conference, the Social Good Summit, is one of those moments in the calendar you have to show up for because it is so solutions driven. And one of the takeaways from this panel, we hope, if you can urge your city leaders, if you work in city government or in local government at any level, we would really like to help consider a conversation around submitting a voluntary local review. There are so many ways in which to report into this, and it could be essentially managed and organized by what your city and town is comfortable with. But I think if we can all show up around the SDGs, show how important the SDGs are to our communities and how we are galvanizing and activating our people to impact these incredible, these must sustainable development goals for us to have a safe and prosperous future, please let us know. We encourage everybody to think about a voluntary local review, and New York City and now Helsinki are here to be your resource. So thank you so much, and have a great conference.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.